and thank you for joining me today on The Political Conversationalist. My name is Ben Phipps, and it's Friday, so we're doing another brief update video on what's going on in the news politically. Now, normally I pick 3 stories, but I couldn't really narrow it down to just 3 stories this week, so I've got 5, and I'm going to try to blast through them real quick. Firstly, remember talking about Pastor Brunson, the evangelical preacher from North Carolina who is being held in Turkey over supposed espionage charges, over supposedly being involved with a failed coup in 2016. Well, Trump has recently made this one of his own missions to try to get Pastor Brunson back on American soil, and he has imposed sanctions on 2 high-ranking Turkish officials. Of course, Turkey didn't like that too much because, nobody likes sanctions that cost us money, cost them money. And what we're seeing now is we're kind of playing who's going to back down first with the Trump and Erdogan, President Erdogan of Turkey. Now, from all accounts that I've read, even though in the way they lead their countries they are not similar, but in their attitudes they are fairly similar. They're very adamantly right, they think they're always right, and they do not want to admit defeat. So it will be very interesting to see who backs down first and what level it has to escalate to before someone does back down. Of course, the U.S. being a more powerful nation, being a richer nation, does hold a few more cards up its sleeve, but we'll keep an eye on that situation and see how that unfolds over the next few weeks. Secondly, the remains were returned from North Korea. Reportedly, they are the remains of 55 U.S. soldiers who died in the Korean War. However, it is often difficult, and in some cases it has proved to be impossible to correctly identify bones that were returned from the battlefield. And the reason is the government, our government, did not keep DNA records during the Korean War. That's 60-ish years ago. So it's not like they can just scrape some DNA off the bones and run it through the system and all this is such and such. Oftentimes it takes years to correctly identify a person, and sometimes it is even impossible. I know the last round of remains that were returned from Korea, they were not fully correctly identified. Also in the past, North Korea has shown a little bit of inadequacy in anatomy and physiology, as they've returned multiple bones from different bodies in the same box and thought they were from the same person. So we'll see how that unfolds again in the near future. Hopefully God will give the scientists wisdom as they discover who it was so we can properly honor them, properly bury them, and give their families closure. Still, it is a good thing that North Korea was willing to return them. Thirdly, Google is creating a search engine specifically for China. In 2010, Google pulled out of China because they said China was against free speech and they were trying to censor them too much. Well, apparently that China is a big enough market that Google has decided to swallow its morals for a while and is going to make a search engine that will work in the heavily censored country that is China. And from what I did read, and what you can check down in the article I linked below, I believe it's Reuters, fairly reliable article, some words are going to be blacklisted from the search, like democracy, free speech, freedom of the press, things like that. So it'll be interesting to see how Google China works. It may just be a static list of phrases that are not going to be allowed to be searched, or it may be more in-depth than that. That'll be interesting to see over the next couple of weeks. Apparently this has been in the works since spring of 2017. Anyway, as we see a lot, especially in business, morals does not trump money. Okay, fourthly, Pope Francis. Pope Francis has changed the Catholic Church's views on capital punishment. Historically, the Catholic Church has approved capital punishment in exceedingly rare circumstances, in the past couple decades, exceedingly rare circumstances. But now he says that that law is outdated, that tenet, rather, is outdated, and that capital punishment is always inadmissible because it denies the dignity that every human being has. It's given to them by God. Now, there are Christians, I know, that are Protestants, that also are against capital punishment, but it's interesting that the Catholic Church can do this big of a turnaround and, still keep all of its members. It's hard to imagine how everything evolves over time, even religions. But that will be interesting to see because we have a lot of Catholic people in the U.S. We have a lot of Catholic senators and congressmen and things like that. in fact, my congressman is openly Catholic. It'll be interesting to see if that changes his viewpoint, or if that's going to be something that the Pope personally believes and doesn't exactly prescribe to all of his followers. So that may have a wide-reaching impact. And lastly, Trump administration is going to lower emission standards on cars. Now, that was the headline of the article, that the Trump administration wanted to lower emission standards and pollute the environment and set the world on fire. But when I read it in depth, this is what it read. There was a standard set up during the Reagan administration, I believe, that by 2025, all car manufacturers ought to have cars averaging at least 50 miles per gallon. The Trump administration is wanting to lower that to 43.7 miles per gallon by 2020. It's really not that big of a change. But when you... That's kind of the sensationalism of the news. They want to get ratings. They want to grab your view. But that's really not that big of a change. In fact, that was the original plan, was to get that by 2020 and then continue on to 2025 at 50 miles per gallon. Some proponents of this are actually saying that it's actually good because oftentimes car manufacturers make the car substantially lighter to get more miles per gallon. And a lighter car is inherently more dangerous than a heavier car. You can see that in car accidents where you have an old car from the 70s versus a Prius. So it's interesting to see what will come out of that. Likely it won't be a very big change. My car gets 40 miles to the gallon. I enjoy that. But it is very interesting to me that the headline was somewhat inaccurate in saying that emission standards were going to be lowered when really a goal was set to be lowered. Anyway, I hope you learned something today. Talked about 5 things, tried to be kind of brief. Leave a like and a comment down below. I'll try to get back with you. You can always follow me on Facebook. Shoot me an email from there. I respond as quickly as I possibly can to those if you have a question or anything like that. And eventually I will be doing Q&A videos as well. Anyway, thanks for watching.